Hey, Professor Petty here. So just to make sure, this is the first slide with content on it in the PowerPoint called PowerPoint 70, Day 1, meaning Philosophy 70, and this is the first day, so to speak, even though you're looking at a PowerPoint. It might not be your first day. All right, so get to the first slide, which says some philosophical questions. And number one is, what's a belief? Philosophy is significantly about beliefs. You can kind of approach this in many different ways, but one good way to start thinking philosophically is to think about beliefs and what they are. So what do you think a belief is? Not what's a belief for, or what does a belief do? But what is a belief? We all have many, 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 many beliefs. You might think of some examples of what counts as a belief. Like, do you believe that that's Professor Petty speaking to you right now? Do you believe that that's a painting on the wall behind Professor Petty, or a window into a weird universe? Here's my thumbnail kind of, working definition of what a belief is. It's not a perfect definition, but it's a good starting point. A belief is a thought, but not all thoughts are beliefs, right? So in order to be a belief, it's necessary that something is a thought, right? It's necessary for a belief to be a thought. For something to count as a belief, it must at least be a thought. But that's not enough, right? Being a thought is necessary for being a belief, but it's not sufficient. It doesn't automatically guarantee that every thought is a belief, because I can entertain thoughts that I don't believe. And thinking about what differentiates thoughts that I don't believe from thoughts that I do believe might help you figure out what's the condition or the criterion which would render a thought a belief, which would turn a thought into a belief or make a thought count as a belief. If thoughts that I entertain but don't believe aren't beliefs, why wouldn't I believe them? Right? Like maybe the thought that Santa Claus was really a Martian spy or something like that. Like, it's an interesting thought. I might speculate about it. I might have a vivid imagination. I might just be having fun playing with thoughts the way an artist plays with colors, right? But if I have a thought that I don't believe, that means I don't think that it's true. And that's your clue for what a belief is. A belief is a thought that you think is true, right? Now, sometimes we use language in ways that words and even phrases and sayings have non-literal meanings. So sometimes we'll go, oh, I don't believe it. I know it, right? But that really, that's not literal, because you can't not believe something and also know it. Because think about it. Suppose it's true that I'm Rick Rapetti, right? And I say, I don't believe I'm Rick Rapetti. I know I'm Rick Rapetti, right? Well, if I know that I'm Rick Rapetti, then certainly I think that I'm Rick Rapetti. I think it's true that I'm Rick Rapetti. And thinking that it's true is believing it, right? So when we say, I don't believe it, I know it, what we mean to say, if we spoke more literally and precisely, would be, I don't merely believe it, I know it. See, I don't merely think it's true, I know that it's true. And then that's a clue right there, that in the same way that not all thoughts are beliefs, but all beliefs are thoughts. Not all thoughts or beliefs are knowledge, but all knowledge involves thoughts and beliefs, because all knowledge is about a thought that you think is true, but that you have really good reasons, if not proof, that it's true, right? So when we say that a thought is necessary for something to be a belief, but it's not sufficient, right? We're talking about when you define something, one really good kind of definition is when you give what we call necessary and sufficient conditions for the thing that you're defining. So if we define a belief as a thought that you think is true, it's necessary that it be a thought, but that's not enough. That's not sufficient. Sufficient means enough. But if you add to the thought that you think it's true, then I think you've given necessary and sufficient conditions for a belief, in which case you could define a belief as a thought that you think is true. Similarly, you could define knowledge, right? Thoughts and beliefs are not sufficient for knowledge, but they're necessary. But you might be able to define knowledge as a thought that you think is true and for which you have enough evidence to establish the fact that it is true, or something like that, right? Good enough reason or proof, or sufficient justification. Now that's vague. How much justification or evidence or proof do you need for something to count as knowledge? So okay, so I went way beyond what is a belief, which is just question 1 on slide 1 in this PowerPoint. But all of those questions are questions in what we call the theory of knowledge, or the study of knowledge and belief, and the differences between knowledge and belief and evidence and truth, and all sorts of different kinds of, what we could say, informational states, right? Things that count as facts. There's good data, bad data, valid claims, invalid claims. All those things are in one category of philosophical inquiry, which we call epistemology. The word will be spelled out on another slide. But epistemology is one of the 3 major branches of philosophy. How do we know what we know? What is knowledge? What criteria need to be satisfied for something to be knowledge, right? Okay, so that's coming down the line. We have that on another slide. Second question, what are beliefs for? Think about it. I mean, you have lots of beliefs. What are they for? Or what do they do? How do they function? Suppose you're in class. Ask yourself the question I'm asking you. Ask yourself, what do your beliefs do? What are they for? How do they function in your life? I'm pausing so that you have a little time to think. I would suggest that beliefs have a variety of functions. But the primary function or purpose, what are beliefs for, is, do I have your attention? Are you curious? Your mind is a belief-forming machine, so to speak, a wet one, biological, living, or a mechanism, or a program, or a system designed to reflect what's true, reality. So beliefs are things that you think are true. So what they're supposed to do is depict what's true in your mind, or mirror or reflect or represent or model reality outside of your mind in your mind as the belief. So belief's a kind of little picture of reality, or a model of reality, or a map of the world, or of some little part of the world, like the little part right now that you're looking at. That's Professor Rapetti speaking about epistemology, the study of knowledge and belief. Right? So if you think that that's true, then there's an impression in your mind somehow, a picture, a model, a map of this little part of reality here with, Professor Rapetti talking to you about philosophy, that it actually is a part of reality that you're perceiving, right? So that's what beliefs are for. Beliefs are maps of the world. So, if you have a bad map, you're sure to get lost. So I hope that you realize that the things that you accept as true, that you think are true, that you believe, they're maps or models or simulations or replicas or representations or photographs or pictures or images or mirror images of the way the world is. You hope, ideally, that what's going on in here properly reflects what's going on out there. Like if you had a camera and you aimed it at the world, right? You're seeing reality, you hope. And your beliefs are like a mirror that you aim at reality. And whatever appears in the picture on the mirror looks like reality, resembles it enough so that you can function in the world. So question 3, all right, these are simplifications. And by the way, almost everything that we think is a little wrong, not literal, or a little misrepresentative, or rough and ready, a model. It's an approximation. It's probably true in some way and probably false in another. And this is the kind of thing that we have to accept, that we're working with kind of approximations that we try to sharpen as we go along. All right. We want to just get some basic tools and concepts that we can play with so that we understand. I'm setting out some kind of terminology in the course about knowledge and beliefs and truth and whatnot. And this is some of the terminology and tools and ways of thinking and speaking about things which constitute kind of foundational elements that make up the study of philosophy. All right. So question 3, when, why, and how should we adopt a belief or revise our beliefs? Not when do we, or how do we, right? Well, it does say when, and it does say how, but really the bigger question is why, right? Because it may be the case that at this time, or when we reach a certain age, or under certain circumstances, we change our beliefs, we adopt new beliefs, we get rid of old beliefs, and we do that in a certain kind of way. So that's certainly important. But the bigger question is why? Why should you accept a belief or reject a belief? I would submit to you that the best answer to that question is one that's informed by what beliefs are for. So if you recall what beliefs are for, they're maps of reality. They're things that you think are true. And if something is true, that's the way it is in the world outside of your mind. The belief is just a reflection in your mind of the thing outside of your mind. The way a shadow of my hand, if I was flashing a light against it, the shadow on the wall behind me would be shaped like my hand, right? The hand is the real thing. The shadow is just a reflection of it that kind of has the same shape as it, right? So the beliefs in our heads are kind of like shadows, we imagine, like cast by real objects outside of our head, like hands, right? So when should you get rid of one of these shadow images in your mind and pick up a new one or change it? Right? Well, once again, I said the answer is based on the answer to number 2. What are beliefs for? Beliefs are maps of reality. So when you have good enough reason to think that a belief that you had previously accepted is inaccurate, or it needs to be synced, like when you sync your iPhone and update it and get the latest software on your GPS or something like that. You need to upgrade, you need to sync, you need to revise, get the new version, right? The upgrade. We need to constantly upgrade and sync our minds to reality. Otherwise, we wind up radically disconnected with all the changing things going on around us. So the primary reason to accept a belief is because you have good reason to think that it models reality well. Yeah. Right? And that's the same reason why you should reject a belief or doubt it and review it and revise it or possibly revise it. If you have reason to think it doesn't map reality anymore. Okay. So question number 4 isn't really a question. It's, let's consider some sample beliefs or belief questions. So 4.1 is, does everything happen for a reason? Do you believe that everything happens for a reason? This is a real litmus test of a philosophical mind, by the way. How skeptical are you about the claim that everything happens for a reason? Are you suspicious at all about whether or not that's true? Most people think that it's true. And, you know, there are 2 different senses of that claim, everything happens for a reason. One is a kind of simplistic cause and effect thing. Sure, the fire happened because someone struck a match, right? Well, surely lots of things happen for that kind of reason. But maybe even not everything happens for even that kind of reason. Like in quantum physics, they say that, you know, a quantum tiniest unit of energy could either be a particle or a wave, or it could be either, it's neither until somebody observes it, and then it randomly is one or the other, or something like that, right? So some things are, they seem to not even happen, they just happen. We don't know why. But suppose that everything in the universe is non-random. And when things seem random, that's just because we don't know enough about what causes them. But let's assume for the sake of argument that everything happens for a reason, in the sense that like a fire happened because someone struck a match, right? Or rain happened because, you know, enough moisture collected in the cloud and it formed droplets, which then were heavy and fell, right? And everything has that kind of explanation. Everything has a cause and effect explanation. That's not what most people say, or that's not what most people think when they say everything happens for a reason. Usually, why do people say, hey, everything happens for a reason? Think about it. What are the circumstances under which people say that? It's usually when things that happen are unexpected, unfortunate, unpleasant, shocking, terrifying, frightening, mysterious. They threaten our knowledge, our understanding, our faith that the universe is good, our faith in a just world. Right? When bad things happen, basically, in other words, things that challenge faith. Right? Like, how could such a bad thing like that happen in a good world, or a world governed by God, let's just say? So the answer is, hey, everything happens for a reason. It's a reassuring, kind of consoling appeal to faith. You know, things will turn out. Something good will come out of it. Often enough, things seem bad, but they turn out for the best. So it's just a kind of optimism and faith, really. That's what people mean when they say everything happens for a reason. Now, if you believe something like that, there's 2 different senses. Everything's cause and effect. Everything's part of a just loving world governed by a benevolent higher being of some sort. That's a totally different sense. Excuse me. Right? Do you believe that? That's a philosophical question. And if you do, what evidence could ever count for it or against it? Something to think about. Could anything ever disprove that belief? It's hard to imagine. Does that mean that it's true? That's a puzzling issue. All right, second question is related to the first. Is God real? And that's one of the main philosophical questions in the study of reality. Right? Another big word. Study of knowledge and belief and information and things like that. That's epistemology. These big words will be on another slide. The study of reality or existence or being. Right? What the criteria are for us to say with confidence that something exists. What would it mean even? We call that field of inquiry, that branch of philosophy, metaphysics. Not physics, but meta, M-E-T-A, metaphysics. Okay? So, question 2, 4.2, is God real? That's one of the primary metaphysical questions. God's not physical. He's not in space and time. Most of us don't think we ever see, hear, smell, touch, or taste God. Right? All right. Key question in philosophy, is God real? 4.3, did the world have a beginning? Well, science, many scientists think it did. 13 some odd billion years ago with the Big Bang, where there was almost nothing. All of it shrunk in the tiny head of a little dot, which expanded and collapsed a lot of times really fast, and then everything slowed down and cooled down, and then galaxies formed, and suns and planets formed, and eventually here we are. Right? That's the Big Bang theory. And the religious believers think, well, no, God created the world. So, and then there's a blend of both, that God, pressed a button and caused the Big Bang or something like that. Well, how do you know any of those things? Right? Did the world have a beginning? The idea of there being nothing and then a beginning. Could something ever come from nothing? That's one of those kinds of questions. That's a deep philosophical question, like chicken and the egg. Right? Imagine a world with absolutely nothing. Nothingness, no atoms, no energy, no nothing. Could something form out of nothing? Right? Ancient Greek philosopher named Parmenides said, you can't get something from nothing. So if there ever was nothing, there could never be anything after that. We're in a world of something. This is stuff. This is something. It's not nothing. And it couldn't have come out of nothing. So there never could have been a time prior to this world of something where there was nothing. So the world having a beginning, in a way, is maybe the idea that this world came out of nothing at a particular point in time. That's problematic. Of course, if you believe in God, then you think, well, no, there never was a nothing. Even if there was no world, there was a God. And God created something out of nothing because he can do anything. He's God. Not that there are no problems with that way of thinking, but that's a question. Question 4.4, more generally, are supernatural, spiritual, mystical experiences real? Or are they wishful thinking? When people have all kinds of paranormal experiences, precognition, seeing the future, dreams of the future, intuitions, visions, seeing ghosts, have out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences. They go through a tunnel, they meet a being of light, all these kinds of things. Telepathy, mind reading, right? Miracles, all these sorts of things. All of those are in the same category as God, right? God, because God's a supernatural being. So you might not necessarily believe in God, but you might still think that things that are not physical exist, do they? All right, I think that's the end of this slide. Yes, it is. So I'm going to end this tape, and then you click on to the next slide.